Foundation for Arable Research now doing things with Flux. What actually are you doing?
The Flux meters. Okay, so the Flux meter project is a cross-sector, cross-region project where we're collecting information about nutrient losses from cropping systems.
So what's the history of it?
It started with a conversation in my office between Hawke's Bay Regional Council and myself, and they came along and they said, we know where there are a lot of flux meters lying around not being used. And they had belonged to Ravensdown, and they'd had them made for a project that they were going to do on DCDs. And the DCD big bubble broke, which was that whole dairy thing. And so they didn't do that project, and they had something like 136 flux meters sitting there with no job to do. So we started to put our heads into thinking mode, and we thought there is no information about nutrient losses from cropping systems. We need to know what's going on, so we built a project to do that. And Ravensdown were very generous, and they said, take the flux meters and use them. So that's how it came about.
Who else is involved?
Okay, so we've got, because it's cropping systems, we're not just thinking arable crops, we're talking about vegetable crops, and we're talking about forage crops and stock in the system. So FAR and Hort New Zealand and the industry bodies, along with Ravensdown. And we're in 3 regions, so we're in Canterbury, in Hawke's Bay and the Manawatu, and those 3 regional councils are also involved. So Hawke's Bay Regional Council, Horizons, Environment, Canterbury. And Plant and Food are our science providers and our technical providers. So it's a big collaborative group.
So how does it work?
How does the flux meter work? Okay, a flux meter is essentially a long skinny bucket. That's all it does. It's collecting drainage water, and as you can see, it's just made out of like plumbing equipment. It has a wick in the top here, and they are buried in the ground. The top of the flux meter sits a metre below the surface, so they are way down below any of the working area that the farmer's going to do above them. And once they're in the ground, they're there forever. We've got these tubes that come up to the surface, which is how they collect the drainage water out of them. So Plant and Food run a kind of water balance model, so we know when drainage is happening. And when we have a drainage event, they come out to the paddock and they pump out the drainage water that's collected in their long skinny bucket, our flux meter, and they measure the volume, and then we take a small sample to measure the nutrient concentration. And we're looking at 2 nutrients. We're looking at nitrogen and phosphorus.
On a practical system, you are looking at a practical use as far as farmers are concerned?
This is important information because of all the new regional rules that are coming in around water quality. So it relates to the regional councils being able to deliver their obligations under the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management, and we need to know what volume or what amount, how much nutrients are being lost from farming systems.
So as a farmer, they can see whether they're under-fertilising or over-fertilising?
Yes, that's correct. As a farmer, once we get these nutrient concentrations in the drainage water, we can then look at the system and get a bit of an idea about what's going on top. So we're collecting a lot of information about what's going on on the top as well.
So obviously at this stage it's research, but there is in the future a very practical situation?
The practical part of the program is to start to use the information that we're collecting to work out whether we're a good or a bad or an ugly system, and then go back to the farmers and say, well, we can see that you're losing nutrients at this part of the rotation, and then we can sit down with them and start to look at their management practices on the farm and maybe improve them, or we can try and make some changes. But there are a lot of bits of the system that they can't change, so things like soil type and climate come into play as well.
I was going to ask you about that because obviously you're spreading around the country to get those different soil types.
Yes. So we've got a range of soil types and a range of climates. So we go from the difficult to manage soils. So we've got some stony soils in Canterbury, which are quite free draining. We've got in the Manawatu a very light sandy soil, which is also free draining. So those are the more difficult ones to manage as far as nutrient movements. Down to some of the deeper silt loams like that we've got on this farm. So range of soils, range of climates, and the long-term future of this project is to run it over maybe 7 years. So we've got a range of different seasons.
It's becoming vital now because of the new rules and regulations and land use consents.
That's correct. Yes, farmers are going to have to take responsibility for nutrients leaving their farm, and they're going to have to demonstrate that they're using good management practices to reduce that risk.
That's why you're taking it on as research, so that people can learn and benefit from it.
That's correct, yes.
What's the future for the program?
Okay, so we finished the first 3 years of the program, and that is, as we said at the beginning, is a collaborative industry regional council group, and it was funded from the MPI Sustainable Farming Fund program of work with contributions from industry and the councils. Everybody's chipped in, and we are hoping to get another chunk of money to keep this project going for another 3 to 4 years.
So we were to Nathan Guy.
We've applied actually to the MFE, which is Ministry for the Environment Fund, Freshwater Improvement Fund. So different ministry. So we're very optimistic that they'll see the value of this project.
The value is there. I mean, obviously the fact that so many organisations are working shoulder to shoulder with you means that it is vital.
Yes. And there's a value. The value is in having a long-term data set of nutrient losses from mixed systems. And then they can use that information to actually validate some of the models, the farm systems models that are being used out there, models like Overseer, which the regional councils are using to get estimates of nutrient losses from cropping farms or from all farms. So this is an important data set to validate whether or not Overseer is giving us reasonable information.
Very important is access by the farmers to this information.
Absolutely, yes.
How do they do that?
At the moment it's all reported, and we report the results from each of the sites in the public media.